Okay, before we get into this juicy episode, I want to share with you a holiday promo that's running for all of the month of December. I am offering $200 off my Awakening program. This is a 3-month individual coaching program where I will take you through an arc of an experience to help make sense of a mindfuck of a confusing relationship, process the feelings so that you can actually heal and become the best version of yourself, so that you don't have to experience painful love ever again. This program includes an educational component with modules and videos and action-oriented homework. There's also some guided journeys, guided meditations in there for your benefit. It also includes individual sessions where we are really going to deeply process what has happened and give you that space to regulate your nervous system, to create that relationship with your inner child and really move some of this stuckness that you're feeling. And then you also get accountability support, real time. So when you get that message from your ex, who do you reach out to? Who can help you make that decision on what to say or what not to say? So having that real-time support to help you interrupt the reflex that you have been in. But most importantly, this is a container to hold you while you process what's happened and step into what's next. I really want you to feel safe and supported to say the thing that is too embarrassing and too shameful in your mind to say to your friends and family. Maybe you don't have anybody else that you can share these things with. And in the safety, you'll find healing. So again, this promo runs for all of December, $200 off this 3-month program. The first step is to schedule a free session so that we can get to know one another and see if this is going to be a good fit for you. And I want you to just imagine and envision this life where you feel so fulfilled and secure in yourself on your own, freeing you to then confidently choose a partner who can align with you in your life and celebrate the woman that you are, because you deserve that and it's so waiting for you. The link to the free session and to the Awakening program is in the show notes below, so be sure to check it out. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to this episode with one of my beautiful teachers, Sacha Bryce, where we are going to dive into her healing journey and hear all about the moments that were most impactful as she began to find clarity and wake up and choose to live consciously in her life. Sacha, I'm so excited you're here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Bree. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling good. It feels like such a treat. I was saying to get to drop in with you in this way and have an authentic conversation together.
Yeah. Let's tell the audience a little bit about how we know each other and the variety of ways that we've got to experience each other.
I know, it's really amazing that we've connected in this way. I feel like in the online space, that's one of the gifts, is that we get to get pulled into these containers where you wouldn't probably never have the chance to meet if not for that way.
Yeah.
And we originally met through a shared business coach. So we were both working on expanding our businesses and connected in a container that, the irony for me, was supposed to be a big group of women, or at least 5, I think. And it was only Bree and me.
Yeah. And I remember sitting in those calls and you were talking about, tapping, but more of like the courses that you were launching or what you were trying to do business wise. And I had never known what tapping was. And I mean, we went many months of talking more logistically about business. And then you said something, or maybe you invited me to your free tapping circle that you do various free experiences. And I remember going to that and I was like, oh my God, I need this. I need to learn this tool. Like,
it was so incredible to have you introduced to it in that way. And then for us to dive deep together in this journey of EFT. So we should probably tell the audience about what that is in
Yeah. Tell them about what EFT is, what you do, why you're so passionate about EFT and teaching and practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. So once Bree and I completed that business course together, Bree came into the work that I offer. I'm an EFT, emotional freedom techniques practitioner and trainer. And I am really passionate about sharing this modality. I'm tapping right now on the side of my hand.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a simple and yet profound technique. And a very brief overview, if someone is unfamiliar with it, is that it's rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, similar to acupuncture, where we work with the needles. There's this map of the energy body in the energy system in the body. And as we tap on these particular points, we help to regulate the nervous system, bring a harmony back into the body. And according to traditional Chinese medicine, where there is flow in the energy, there is health, there is happiness, vitality, harmony. So when we're experiencing like stress or pain or fear, there's some sort of disruption in our energy system. And I think we can really feel that intuitively. It's like when I feel stressed, I notice like my shoulders are up towards my ears, or I feel like there's a block of this feeling of being in flow and being in just this natural vitality. And so there is a lot more to the technique, as Bree knows, because she studied with me for 6 months in this.
Yeah.
I can't give the 6 month lowdown in a short way, but as for myself, I'm a highly sensitive person, and I feel like I've always been just very attuned to energy and have experienced a lot of fear in social situations and in, for example, speaking, like public speaking or using my voice. And so tapping in a practical way has been really a way for me to work with my energy to move beyond fear and to feel more confident to share my voice, to share myself with the world.
It really is such a beautiful example, I guess, of the power of this work, where you share very publicly about how shy you were as a child, and now you're literally a a teacher, and you talk to thousands of people all the time. Like, you have a very widespread way that your voice connects and touches people. And
Yeah.
moving through that fear with EFT is just incredible to see that transition.
Absolutely. And when you say like shy as a child, I'm like, no, shy as an adult too.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to hide. And I often tell that example, like when I started doing this work, I only did my sessions via phone because
Mm,
I was so scared to even do a video. I was like, that's so confrontational. Like to be, this is back in the day where video wasn't so
yeah.
normalized, but I just like, that's a reminder for me of how far I've come because I was afraid to get on a video call with people. I was like, no, I'm just going to do phone.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. It's like,
Mhm.
it's a lot to be exposed and to put ourselves out there. And I'm really like passionate about the people who feel the most fear in expressing themselves, because I think that there's a lot to share in those people,
Oh
the
yeah.
sensitive ones, right? They have like these secret wisdoms,
Yeah.
secret power.
Yep. Yeah. And I think having a tool that actually helps you make change is so powerful, because I know for me, like, I did years of talk therapy, and I could understand and rationalize and tell you why A plus B equaled C, right? In my world, but I was still doing C. Like, I wasn't able to shift the pattern. And to have a tool that's so accessible, that's literally at your fingertips, that you can use anytime, anywhere, by yourself, with a practitioner, like, it's like a magic tool. I'm like, where is this secret been my whole life?
It really is magic. And it's hard to like understand until you've gone into it, because it brings in the cognitive aspect that we experience in talk therapy, where we
Yep.
need to understand what's happening. And then it brings us into this whole level, which I think a lot of people that are interested in yoga or spirituality are drawn to, because it's like,
Yeah.
what is happening in my body? And that's
Mhm.
why I was originally drawn to yoga, which is my background,
Yeah.
where I remember being in a yoga class and I was like, I was like, I think 16 or 15 or I was really pretty young, but I was like, it was the first time I like felt myself. I was like,
Yeah.
there I am, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Hmm.
that's what's real. Cause I was so used to feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
And so tapping brings that element of like the truth of who we are, our soul, our body, and then our mind as well, to
Mhm.
understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think the mind is a tricky thing because we can stay there because that feels safe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning about this thing. I know I have anxiety around public speaking, which means I should be able to shift it, right? It's like the knowledge doesn't actually equal action. So to be able to use the knowledge part, but also bring in the body to help move into those places that need to actually be released, and your body to guide you, was like, for me, having the combo made it more accessible because I was really good at the analyzing part and not so good at the body part. So I'm like, I can lean a little bit more here and then like dip my toe and like, well, where are you feeling that in your body? I don't know yet, but like I'm gonna try to keep moving in that direction.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a practice. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't think anyone is, I think, especially our culture, we're more practiced at being in our heads and logic and figuring it out. And so I think people are drawn to, especially like with somatic therapy becoming so popular, people are really drawn to learning about, okay, what's actually happening in my body.
Yeah. So let's rewind a little bit. So you've had I feel like you've lived many lives and sort of just the places you've lived in the world and the things that you've done. So give
Mhm.
us sort of a high level view of maybe where you were and how you came into the work, and some of the we'll get into more of the specifics of deep, like specific things on your journey. But how did you find EFT?
Yes, I'll try to give you the overview. So, I was raised in an interesting family because my family was very strictly religious. So, I was raised Jehovah's Witness, but also my mom had witnessed her father go through colon cancer and through the medical system and not get really the help that he needed. And so he died when she was like about 20. And she became really passionate about holistic healing. So my mom was really like my first teacher. She was like a bit radical, because back in the day, like home birthing, she birthed us at home. She was like just really into like, okay, how can we take more power back in our body and do things differently? Because she was a bit traumatized by the medical system at that time. So she was really on this journey of learning about holistic nutrition, and she became an EFT practitioner. So that
Mm.
feels an important part of the journey, because when I was about 8 years old, I was introduced to tapping by my mom. And I always share, like, I think like when you're 8, you think your mom's pretty nuts. Like I was just
Yeah.
like, what the hell is she into now? Like, like she was into homeopathics and essential oils, and like she was really into everything. So when she brought tapping to me, it was like, okay, another weird thing.
Mhm.
But I remember like secretly knowing that it worked, because I had the experience of feeling more relaxed while I did it. And and so, like my life, I was always drawn to, like, as I said, at a young age, yoga and all of this. And I knew I wanted to work with people. So I went to university to study psychology. And after getting a bit in touch with like the academic world, it's very heady, right? Like you're studying
Mm.
all these like research papers. And I was like, okay, I need more of like the embodied experience. So I ended up going on a long journey to India, to Cambodia, like across Asia, Europe. I just like went on my own journey for about 5 years of studying these holistic medicine energy techniques and mostly focused on yoga. So I became a yoga therapist. And when I came back home after about 5 years, I always tell this story because it was one of those like full circle moments where
Yeah.
I was sitting on the couch with my mom and she was like, yeah, like, it's so great that you're doing yoga. And she was like, have you ever thought of like practicing tapping? And I was like, it was just like, I knew in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like that is the thing that's missing. And so she started teaching me what she had been practicing with clients, and which is the clearing work, my mom's unique modality. And I was just like blown away. I was like, I need to follow tapping. And I went on to study tapping, and that became really my practice.
Yeah, that's wild that you like traveled the whole world more or less to then come back home and be it's like tapping was here all along.
I know, it's funny how we sometimes have to, and I always think of that today because people are like, oh, why did I go in that direction? And it's like, we have to like go sometimes on these windy paths, like even of being in relationships that aren't quite the right fit
Yeah.
to take us to where we're meant to be. Like, I really
Yeah.
believe in that.
Yeah, which is much easier to see in hindsight than in the moment. But
Absolutely.
so when you were on your journey, when you're on your self-discovery journey, more or less, where were you in relationships?
Yeah, so I had been in a about 5 year relationship before I did my first big move, which was to Australia. And I did a semester of my school in psychology studies that I studied in the University of Toronto. I decided to do a semester in Australia. And I just knew it was like, I talk about how there's like these quiet whispers in our heart. I remember picking up this book and it was like an African proverb. And they said that in these villages in Africa, they actually practice like listening to the quiet whispers of the heart. And it just resonated so much because I'm like, we're not taught, right? We're just like the mind, logic, do the right thing. And but my heart was like, leave this man and like leave this path. And he
Yeah.
was like a great human being, of course, and like really traditional family. And growing up so non-traditional, right? Like we didn't celebrate Christmas because of the Jehovah's Witness piece. We never celebrated Christmas, Halloween, birthdays, like, and then my family was also really weird into all this holistic healing. Like it was just like a totally unconventional
Yeah.
upbringing. And I remember a therapist of mine was like, oh, you needed this man because he was showing you like the conventional. And I remember like I would celebrate Christmas with his family and we'd all wear like matching pajamas. And it was just like the most traditional, like everything was just like picture perfect with his
Yeah.
family. And it's almost like I needed that experience to realize that that's not my path. And so I ended up like, it was really hard actually, like, and quite dramatic. Like he ended up flying to Australia to try to like, get me. And like, it was just like this whole thing. And I kept going towards my own path at that point.
Yeah.
And then from then on, I was actually not in a relationship for 7 years. So it
Okay.
took me like, yeah, 7 years of like really being single. Like I wasn't dating. I was just like into yoga. I can't even tell you the amount of like silent retreats and like yoga retreats I was working at or attending for myself. I was just like,
Yeah.
no, I need to know myself
Yes.
before I can be in a relationship.
How long was that period of time where you were feeling like brushes of whispers before you decided to listen?
That's a really good question. And I I honestly don't even know that I know for sure, but
Yeah.
it was like the calling to leave. And I
Yeah.
think like the calling to go literally the furthest place you can imagine, right? From Canada to Australia. Like life was like, no, come here. And I
Yeah.
could just feel that it was like, this is the way.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens. Like there are maybe signs that lead up to it, but I do believe that there will be opportunities to like actually leave if you're meant to.
Yeah, I love diving into this topic of intuition versus like our ego or versus fear,
Mhm.
because usually when you get those whispers, it's not something that's comfortable to hear. It's
Not
usually
at
like,
all.
you got to leave this guy, you got to move across the world, period, right? And there's like no charge to it. There's no like you have to or else, like it's just like a fact in your body.
Yes.
Whereas the ego is like, you got to run away from this guy. You got like, it's just more like charged.
Yes. And I think both come up because it's
Yeah.
very hard for us to stay with,
Yeah.
like, there was a peaceful knowing. It's like, no, you need to go to Australia. He's not coming with you. Just keep going. And that was very clear. But of course, my ego, like, I remember him saying to me, like, he was such like, he's like, I don't want you to ever have to work. Like, I want you to just be free to like raise the kids and I'm going to work
Mhm.
for us. And he didn't really understand anything that I was into about spirituality. He's like, life is simple. You just be happy. And I was like, uh-oh, like
Uh-oh.
I'm complex. Like I was like, and also I was like, I want to work. Like I want to follow my passion. Like I knew I had this like drive, and not that that wasn't allowed, but it was just like I was getting, this clear idea that our paths were different. And it took years, like, because it was a 5-year relationship. Every time I came back home, we'd see each other, and, just the drama of it that the
Mhm.
ego loves.
Totally. Yeah. And it's
Mhm.
hard to, I mean, both situations are hard where it's like a really dysfunctional, painful relationship. And you can see that it's like the person it doesn't have good intentions or they're hurting you intentionally. And then you have this other side that sounds like that you were in, where it was like, well, he was a good guy. He
Yeah.
was a nice person. He wanted a really traditional life. And in that, there's so many excuses to like deflect what your intuition is saying.
Yes. It's kind of like the stable job,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like, are you sure you're going to be okay without this? And like,
Yeah.
there was a lot of cushioning around like our future, because it was like, it's
Yeah.
going to be good. It's going to
Mhm.
be stable.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you had clarity around what was important to you, because
Mm.
if you haven't yet figured out what makes you tick or what your values are, what your needs are, then there's not that thing to measure someone up against. You're just kind of like, well, maybe I do want the traditional family. Maybe I do want the kids. And then you go down that path and you're like, I definitely don't want this. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of people who do that because it is the more comfortable option, or not even comfortable, but they just don't think they have another option.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. I feel very lucky to have had that insight
Hmm.
early enough to be
Yeah.
like, okay, no, there's more. I need to explore more.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
was sort of the final, I don't know, ounce of strength or thing that helped you
Mhm.
completely not, or, sever that relationship and stop going back?
Yeah, I think like there was quite a cosmic orchestration where when I went to Australia, it's a little bit of a longer story, but I got moved into this apartment, and the women who was living with were like really spiritual. And I was living with 4 women, so the 5 of us in this apartment for the 6 months. And it was just like they were really opening my eyes to things that I didn't, I had tried yoga and all of this, but I didn't really know what meditation was. And they were just like a bit ahead of me on the journey, like, okay, you can actually like listen inside yourself. And so I started to get this guidance, and just continued, I think, to get more and more support in that direction. And then I was like, oh, okay, like this is the way, this is what I need to explore.
Hmm.
So I don't remember what the final straw was, but I think I think when you do follow that path of like the unknown and you just keep following it, you're going to get support. That's been my experience.
Yeah, that blind faith. It's like,
Yes.
I don't know why this feels like the direction I need to go, but doors are opening, so I'm going to keep walking.
Yes.
Like, walking in
Exactly.
the dark. Yep. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And then the teachers appear, right? When you're ready, like for you to be housed with those women was not a cosmic accident. It was
Yeah.
very much in support of you. And I think the more that we can pay attention to those little nudges almost from the universe, that's like, yeah, here, like, see?
I
And then
know.
you
It's going to be
trust a
okay.
little bit longer and then you keep walking.
I know. It's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I was getting like opportunities coming in, just like, yeah, magnetizing, I think, the energy of what I knew was possible. I remember I met
Mm.
someone there and she invited me to Turkey. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I went to Turkey with her family and I just kept like, yeah, magnetizing opportunities. And I think that's what happens when we put ourselves into our truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had this period of time where you were with yourself and finding yourself. Did you have a relationship before the person that you're with now in between that time, or what was the journey thereafter?
Yeah, so there was lots of like different relationships, of course, like friendships and living with different people and but I wasn't in a romantic partnership until the person who I'm with now,
Yeah.
who I met at a tapping course
Mm-hmm.
in the end part of that story.
Which is sort of like a beautiful, I don't know if irony is the right word, but the man that you were with previous was like didn't understand what you did, didn't really sound like he wanted to understand what tapping or yoga or all of these like woo-woo quote unquote things were. And then you end up meeting your partner at a in
It's
literally the thing that you do and love and like breathe.
absolutely, it felt very synchronistic and magical
Mhm.
and just like following the breadcrumbs there too, because we were with in a training with like over 30 people. I don't know if you've heard that story, but
Mm-mm.
so we were in a training and he claims that we saw each other at the event. It was in Toronto and we got interrupted, like somebody walked between. I remember seeing him, but we didn't actually talk. And then we were part of this like private Facebook group for the training, and the teacher posted like in capital letters, I'll never forget that because it literally was in capital letters, opportunity. And I was in this interesting place where the week before, my roommate had told me that she was leaving the apartment quite suddenly. She had got like engaged really quick. And I was just like in a bit of a mess. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to live. I think I'm going to move away. And I was just like in a bit of chaos. And the opportunity was a free session with my partner because he was completing his practice hours and he needed a
Ah,
unique client.
awesome.
In the EFT training, Bree knows all about these practice sessions. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't like think, oh, I'm interested in this man. I was just literally like, I'm interested in free help.
Yeah.
And so I said yes. And then I was teaching yoga at the time for my work. And we had planned a session, and I got caught up, as yoga teachers sometimes do, at the end of a session. I was like in yoga land and I was chatting with my students and I was late for our call. So I texted in the chat. I was like, I'm late. And I was in that kind of like, that self-sabotaging place where you're just like, oh, forfeit the session. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a mess. Don't worry about me. Like just the whole damsel in distress energy. And I remember his response was like, take as long as you need. Like, I'll be here when you're ready. And there was like the first light bulb when I got that message, because I was like, oh, that's quite a sturdy energy. Like people usually don't have time for this type of thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll get you when I'm home then. So, and then we got on the video chat and we're tapping. He's asking me my problems. I'm telling him all my problems. So I'm like, I have no money. I don't know where I'm going to live. I'm a mess. Like my roommate left me. I haven't dated anyone in a long time. Like I like literally just told him tap and talk. We're tapping. And then it was about halfway through the call, he's like, and I said, well, I don't know where to live. And I was like, where do you live? And he was like, well, I live in Toronto. And I was like, it just like something happened where I was like, oh my God, like this person is a real person that I could actually meet. And I just vividly remember, I'm like, I fluffed up my hair and I was like, oh, you live in Toronto. Like it went
Forget
like,
all my problems.
yeah. I'm just like, oh, tell me about you. And it was so funny. So anyways, we like, I remember after that call, I ended up asking if we could meet like the next weekend, and we just really connected from there. So a lot of people who know me think it's really funny that because I hold space for other people for my job, and that it took like a tapping session where I was really open and vulnerable for me to connect with the right person.
Yeah. And to choose a partner who can hold space, right, is like
Absolutely.
really incredible. And I think for people listening to this podcast, a lot of their frame of reference of men are the bad boys, the emotionally unavailable men, the men that don't have time for them, that are constantly in this, like, I like you, and then I'm not going to text you for 3 days. Like, and so to bring awareness that like healthy men are out there,
We are.
and when you get yourself in alignment with yourself, I mean, we talk about attraction or magnetism, whatever you want to call it. It's like you're on that path, and then it's like all of those things come into place on your path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of men that are working on themselves, and when you meet that, it's just so divine because
Yeah.
we're on a path of supporting each other's highest potential,
Mhm.
and that feels really true to this day. And it's been about 5 years now with him.
Yeah. It's the same blind faith, right? Like if you've only had experience with a certain man,
Yeah.
there is some amount of trusting that another type of man exists, and not doing the work to find him, but doing the work for you to be able to be in alignment in with the people that are going to serve you. And that whole process, it sounds like for you, was a lot of yoga, it was a lot of meditation, it was a lot of going within, which I think is the hardest thing to do for most
Mm.
people. And that practice is something that you still cultivate and that you still lean on now.
Yeah. And I think it's the most important piece of all of it. And I know you stand for that too. It's like, I remember making that choice where it's like, I am going to spend my life focusing on being the best version of myself that I can, and really becoming as clear and as free and as happy and as whole as I can.
Yeah.
And from that place, I'm going to attract, whatever it is that is in that highest good. And
Mhm.
I know a lot of people feel sad and broken, and they try to date, for example, from that place.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like, okay, well, you might start attracting that same energy until you really take the time to look at what's going on inside of you.
Mhm. Yeah, and to get clear on what you stand for. I think it's such an important piece because I know in my story, I've always been attracted to growth and understanding the human mind, and like studied psychology. I was in the addiction field for almost a decade, and like people's behavior was just fascinating to me. And coming from my childhood where I was trying to figure out my my like loved ones was where it originated. But when in my toxic relationship, that was almost weaponized against me, that I was like always looking for problems and always needing to be in therapy, and like couldn't I just be okay and happy with like life? Pretty much my desire to learn more about myself was a bad thing.
Mm,
And when you're in situations like that and you don't feel confident that like, no, this is a value of mine, like you might not share that value, okay, but I didn't have that confidence. And so it was
mm,
stifled for a really long time. And there was a lot of guilt associated with going to therapy, or with like, I would secretly read the self-help book, and then try to like implement things like ninja
Right.
style. It was very strange.
I can imagine
Hmm.
that being the case for people who aren't
Yeah.
open to working on themselves, that it being
Hmm.
almost like a threat,
Yeah.
like think something's wrong. And that's
Hmm.
really not conducive if, as you said, you're clear that your value is on growth and
Yeah.
development, which
Yeah.
I think has been one of the most life-changing things for me, is being with my
Hmm.
partner who, even with the development of my own business where I'm sharing tapping, like I remember like dating a little bit and meeting people and just feeling so like I was just so not normal in society. Like
Yeah.
people are like, you do what? Like you tap on your face and you help people? Like, I don't get it. Like I remember meeting men that were just like, no,
Yeah.
and then so having someone who was just like, no, this is great. This is like really valuable and you're amazing at it. And he just like energetically, I think the masculine energy
Yeah.
can really hold that to be like, this is safe
Hmm.
and there's foundation here. And that's really how I grew my business, with that support.
Yeah. I remember when I started doing my dating profile on on, on the apps, the
Yeah.
first question or the first like prompt that I put on there was like must be in therapy or must
A thing.
appreciate therapy or something,
Yes.
because I wanted to be so blatant to like weed out all of those guys who were like you do like we're not aligned. Um, and it was almost like a little bit too in your face forward, but my partner now like kind of laughs about it. He's like, I thought that was the coolest like thing
That's
that you put on
awesome.
there. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you got to be radically clear, and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
attract the right person. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Hmm. So in sort of your awakening, these different moments of awakening, do you have some tips for people who they don't know how to sort of settle into their bodies, they don't know what that even means to be with themselves? Like,
Mhm.
what advice would you give someone who's like, I yearn for that, and I yearn to have my like reconnect my intuition, be able to hear that whisper, but I sit down and then I start thinking about my to-do list.
Yeah. I think some of the most helpful things that have been on my journey is to follow the breadcrumbs and to take risks. Even just today, I was invited to this training and I'm like, oh wow, like, I'm doing all these different trainings, but it's like when things it can feel a little bit scary, but there's opportunities all over the place. And I do think we have to put ourselves in a bit of uncomfortable situations to grow.
Mhm.
And so if you're not being invited, but you know that there's something like even a static dance is a big part of my journey. And it was really scary for me to go to these sober, conscious dance spaces in the city when I started my kind of healing journey. It
Yeah.
was just like, but that risk was so healing for me. And it can even be something as small as like checking out your local yoga studio and just
Yeah.
putting yourself in environments that feel maybe a little bit edgy. And I think post COVID, people do have a lot of fear around being in social settings in a way. But I think that being around people that are on the similar path and taking those little risks
Mhm.
that feel aligned with you is a good first step.
Yeah, helping yourself feel less alone in what you're doing. Because the more
Absolutely.
alone we feel, the more shame, embarrassment, isolation, right? We kind of sink into this hole of like the stories in our minds.
For sure. And that part of us will convince us that like no one else has problems as bad as us. We're
Mhm.
totally unique and abnormal. Like I've had all these thoughts like I can't get help. There's no one there that will really understand me. And I think
Mhm.
just knowing that that's kind of your lower self, that's a part of us that we all have. And that it's not the truth. And so you can choose to come out of that and get support, like you said, by connecting to different people and just like following those things that feel like exciting or just alive in your body, whether that's like a trip or just a trip to the yoga studio, or even I was hearing that someone talk about how I was speaking to someone this week who feels very isolated, and it's like getting out of your house and power walking in a place that you feel safe. And the psychology of that is like when you're moving forward in space, your brain knows that you're actually safe, because if you weren't safe, you wouldn't be lunging yourself in a forward direction.
Yeah.
And so it can be like so simple, but just getting out of the house every day and walking, power walking, and feeling that energy of forward motion can change everything.
Yeah. Trying to come out of the like, I need to sit and meditate today to find my life's purpose, and more like, I'm going to try to be in my mind for 2 minutes or like, I'm going to go for a walk because that feels like aligned for me today.
Totally. And
That's
it's like
small.
that. I remember like most of my 20s, I was just trying to like figure it out. Like, and I
Yeah.
don't know if your clients are in that stage, but it's just like, will I ever find the partner? And it's just like, life is this ongoing journey. It's not going to like, you're not going to just arrive and know everything.
Yeah. I
Mm.
forget or what I was reading or a podcast or something, but it was talking about why we aren't shown the bigger picture. Cause I fall in that too. I'm like, just give me a glimpse, just give me a
Yeah.
glimpse of what this business is going to be, how it's going to work. Like, so I can just like relax for a minute. And it was talking about how if we knew every single heartbreak, every single challenge, every sickness, like if we knew everything that we had to go through, it would be too overwhelming, and we would never
Keep
say yes.
going.
We would never
Yeah.
keep going. So as painful as we think not having the full picture is, it's like shifting that belief to, this is exciting that I don't know yet what's coming, because even if it's something that's more painful, I know I have the tools to work with that. I know that, this is medicine for me, whatever how you look at that experience. And then if
Yes.
it's something awesome, it's like, oh, it's like you don't know what's around the corner. So the journey is the one step and the one step and the one step. Like,
And that's the
as
presence, right? That we're all is the key of all teachings, is like,
yeah,
can you be present? Are you willing to feel what is here in the
yeah,
moment for you? And that's what
yep,
we do with EFT. It's like, okay, can
mhm,
we be with and learn from what the truth of this moment is?
mhm.
So
That's
powerful.
been, in our sessions, in our group sessions, like some of my biggest resistance is being here and the impatience of not knowing when the thing is going to happen, of like, am I going to be okay? I'm working really hard in this direction, I'm not seeing results yet. When is that coming? And like fighting being here now because I want to be there. And it's like it's a constant redirection, it's a constant reawakening, right? Like falling asleep into that old fear and those old patterns, and then waking back up, and then falling
Yeah,
asleep the next day, and then waking. And it's like the healing journey doesn't make it so that you're never going to fall asleep again. It just gives you better tools at waking yourself up quicker each time.
uh,
And tapping is such a beautiful way to wake up, because even if you don't know what you're feeling, you're just kind of in like a funk mood, and you just start tapping and you're like, oh shit, maybe I do like have things that I want to say or want to come out. Like it's such a helpful tool to shift that energy back into love, like you talk about.
absolutely. Because that fear, like we talk about the
Mm-hmm.
two frequencies on the planet, fear and love, and that fear will really impact the present moment when
Yeah.
we start to feel like, and we don't really want to create from that place, whether it's a new relationship or our
Mm-hmm.
business.
Mm-hmm.
So tapping, I talk about a lot, is one of the fastest tools to shift that frequency, to be like, okay, I don't have to be so tense or locked up or scared, because it is scary to be a human. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what's coming.
Yeah. And I think the permission with tapping to speak the negative with the intention of allowing it to move is really powerful, because there's a lot of the self-help culture that's like, love and light, or you focus on the positive, you have to manifest the positive, or you're going to bring negativity into your world if you have one negative thought. And it's like, oh my God, I'm fucking up like my manifesting because I'm sad today. And like, you try
Yeah,
to just force yourself to be happy, which is really inauthentic and shoves it down deeper, and then it explodes in a different way.
exactly.
But with tapping, it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say out loud all of the things that I'm anxious about, and how I'm worried that I'm on another dating app and I'm never going to find my person. I'm going to be single forever. It's like, I'm going to speak that. And then you let yourself speak that and feel whatever's coming to that. And then it's like, it passes through.
Exactly. It's like making the unconscious negativity, bringing it into the conscious awareness, because once, if it's always going to be there, like that
Yeah.
primal negativity. I think that that's a part of being human, the part
Yeah.
of us that wonders if it's going to be okay, or like thinks that we're not good enough, or
Mhm.
that comes up. And it's like, when we can bring it more into the awareness, then we're
Yeah.
not going to be owned by it and make choices by it and let
Mhm.
ourselves spiral in that downward way, right?
Yeah. One
Yeah.
of the most powerful teachings that in your course that I learned was when you were talking about life codes, where it was like, because again, affirmations are something that we're taught that we should do, right? It's like, put the thing on your mirror that you want to become, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, you could tell yourself that all day long till you're blue in the face, but if the belief underneath is subconsciously negating that, that's never going to actually sink in. And so the idea of the life code is like, you tap through the subconscious block, and then you get to this like higher self download that makes sense to you, that resonates, that like reverberates in your body. And
Mhm.
that is the affirmation. Like, that is the true mantra now, because it's part of your being. And that, for me, that understanding that, yes, mantras can be helpful, but they have to come from a place of you, and not from like fear or frustration or whatever you're trying to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you express that,
Mhm.
that it rings true to your system because you've gone all the way through and you have to kind of do that. You have to be willing to,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of us aren't we don't realize it, but we don't want to feel discomfort, right? Like that's how
Mhm.
we're wired. We don't want to look at the negativity. We don't want to feel the discomfort. We just want to feel good. And in doing that, like you said, we actually push it away. And that's why with EFT, it's the Louise Hayes thing. She said, like, you can't just like Febreze the shit in the room, right? If there's a pile of shit in the room, we have to clean it up. Like it's like we can't just put Febreze on shit and pretend it's not there. It's there. And so I love that analogy so much, because it's like that's what we're doing with tapping. We're actually looking at the shit, cleaning it up, and then
Mhm.
having a real true
Mhm.
fresh space to get life codes or to get true wisdom to come through. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. It's so cool. So in your journey, you've kind of conquered the fear of using your voice. You
Mhm.
have followed your intuition into all of these magnificent experiences. You've found a partner who's aligned. Is there any other like benefit or thing that you've seen in your life really transform from following these little moments of awakening and leaning in?
Yeah. Wow. I think there's a lot of different things. I mean, I do feel I'm really proud of building a business that
Mhm.
has sustained me in just beyond any way that I could have imagined when I started, because I did have a lot of programs around doing work that I love, not being able to make money from that, and it having to be like charity work or
Yeah.
something like this. And so when I really got to create a business where everyone is benefiting and I'm able to make a really substantial salary for myself. And
Mhm.
it feels so empowering to know that that's possible. And I really feel passionate about that because I'm like, everyone should be able to share their gifts with the world
Mhm.
and be compensated for it. Because why else are we here? Like,
Yeah.
that just makes so much sense to me from the beginning. Um, and I think really healing a lot of shame this week in the course. We were talking about, I think you were there when we did a circle on like sexual innocence. And just with my background being raised in a religious setting, I had like a lot of shame around sexuality and around this like primal, vital energy that I think is so important to connect with. And I was thinking today in the shower, actually, I said it to my partner yesterday at dinner, but then I was thinking more about it, just like it's such a privilege, I feel, that I got to experience the level of shame and trauma that I have and been able to move through it to the other side. Because without that, like I feel I wouldn't be able to really connect with people and be of service in the way that I am and will continue to be,
Yeah.
because that's been just such a block for me, and such a place of fear.
Yes.
And yeah, and so for anyone listening, it's like I also really believe it's like whatever you're going through right now or you've been through, your challenges, if you're willing to keep going and move through them, are like the greatest privilege of your life,
Mhm.
because they're the gold at
Mhm.
the end of the tunnel that you just can't get unless you went down into the darkness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the mess becomes your message if you
Mhm.
allow it to. If you sift through kind of the mud, right, to find the little pieces of gold. I think sometimes we get stuck in this is happening to me, this always happens to me, this is always going to keep happening to me, and it's never integrated as what can I learn from this?
Yes,
And
which
I
is
had
very
it.
hard to go to until you've
Yeah.
gone all the way through, right? You don't want to go
Oh
to that
yeah.
too soon.
Yes. Yeah. Feeling the experience and then being able to reflect back into, yeah, what does this mean for me?
Yeah. That's-
Because all of like, we can stay in something that happened to us, and you can be a victim of something, absolutely, that you didn't ask for, that was not appropriate. Horrible things happen all of the time, and to stay in the victim mindset is different. So you can be a victim of something without staying in the victim mindset forever, and you get to choose what you want that experience to mean in your life.
Exactly. And to realize that, if you choose to stay in the victim place, that you're really giving your place of power away, right? Because it's in the
Mhm.
hands of something, either the circumstances or the other people, and something that you can't control. And I think when you do this work, you realize that it's like, I'm a powerful creator. And when you take that back and you take 100% radical responsibility for your life, then you
Yeah.
can really use it for the benefit of others, yourself first, but to
Mhm.
really bring it through.
Yeah, that is the irony of healing work, I think, in sort of its essence. It's like it feels so scary and so out of control. And a lot of my clients are afraid to be vulnerable or afraid to have that opened up for them because they're like, I don't know what's going to come out. And what if it's horrifying or terrible or sad, or I'll never not feel this way. And I'm like, even better. Like, let's open that up, because clearly it's been stuffed for a long time. But avoiding that is really taking away all of your control. So if you
All
lean
of your
into
energy.
doing the work, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the resistance to going into it is just going to take your life away, right? And so when we're willing to go towards it and move through the pain, then there's an inevitable like other side. There has
Yeah.
to be, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's so exciting. And we see it all the time with people. Like it's
Mhm.
so beautiful.
Mhm. Yes. Oh, so good. I would love to pull a card if I like to end
Ah,
the sessions or not the sessions, the episodes this way. I do also end my sessions this way with my clients, but I have a deck here. So if you want to just close your eyes, I invite you to tune into the energy of the deck. And as I shuffle, just whenever it feels good to you to tell me to stop, just let me know.
stop.
Okay. Untangle.
Ooh,
Ooh.
love it.
I'm going to read it because I don't know them well enough to be able to, to just
Absolutely.
bring it up. Let's see. Okay. A situation has you twisted and entwined with another, and it's time to untangle yourself. Seek clarity. Know what is yours to own and let go of the rope that has tied you up in this mess. You need not always be concerned with what everyone else does or thinks or wants from you. Loosen the threads so that you can find your own string. Follow the yarn that begins in your heart and weave your own tapestry for others to admire. No more twisting yourself up in knots of other people's expectations, rules, or control. Untangle yourself.
Ooh, perfect
Love
for
that.
eclipse new moon.
Ooh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. I mean, cards are incredible every time we pull them. Where it's like, oh my god, that's exactly what we talked about.
I
That's
know.
exactly what.
So perfect. Follow,
Yeah.
and that works really well with that theme of like leaving that first partner where it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it was really hard because your family has expectations, your culture,
Yeah.
and you do need to follow the thread of your own heart.
Yeah. It's really beautiful messaging.
It really is. Love the word.
Oh. Well, where can people find you, Sacha? Tell them a little bit about what you have going on as far as all of your offerings.
Yeah, I think Instagram is probably the best place. My name is spelled Sacha Bryce
Mhm.
dot EFT. I'm sure Bree will have it
Yeah.
linked.
Yep.
And you can connect with me on Instagram, send me a message. I'm actually opening the certification for a new enrollment in May. So if anyone wants to apply at any point for the EFT and the clearing work certification, that's what Bree and I went on together. It's a
Mhm.
6-month journey, and it really is like your own personal development work. And at the end, you're also able to offer this work in service to others.
Yes, I'm your biggest advocate for that group because
Oh,
it it was the perfect balance of learning, like implementing the skill, and then also learning by doing your own work. And there was so much that I uncovered in that 6 months that has allowed me to really lean into the business and lean into using it and trusting the EFT as a skill. Um, so it's wonderful. You meet an incredible group of women, you're together for 6 months. It's a sisterhood, and you get to see your sisters every week, and they're all over the world. So it's a pretty incredible container that you've created.
thank you, love. I feel
Mhm.
really, really proud of it as well. And I think it was birthed out of like studying psychology and being like, I don't want to just read about old studies. Like, I want
Yeah.
this to be so real and and for me, I learn when I have my own transformation.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, now I can really embody this. So it's a
Mhm.
lot about embodiment and meeting like yourself with your imperfect wounds and inner child. Like, we all have stuff to work through. So that's
Yep.
what we get to do in that course.
And it's so powerful to be in a group of women while you're doing that, right? There's
Mhm.
benefit to doing that one-on-one with a practitioner, but like watching a group of women and being vulnerable in a group of women, especially when we've had some wounding around like females, how females have been sort of targeted against us in our
Oh, yeah.
upbringing, right? So to trust women in a group to not share, not gossip, not talk about you or tell you're crazy is like, it's so healing.
Oh, yeah. It's the
Mhm.
level of integrity with the women that show up to that space. And
Yeah.
I think that that is a big part of it too. And as like we know with tapping, it's like when somebody else shares vulnerably, like it gives a part of us permission to heal and to open as well. So to me, I'm like, yeah. And people listening to this podcast, it's like that's a total illusion to think that you're separate and on this journey alone. It's like we all have to come together to
And
heal.
and we're all scared shitless of being vulnerable in front of other
Yep.
people. Like that's a baseline commonality that we all have.
Absolutely. And we all think that it's only us with this
Yeah.
weird problem. And so part of that healing of the shame and all of that is like just to be witnessing other women and be like, oh my God, I
Oh my
have
God.
that too. I thought that was just me, and it's like, no, it's not. We're so incredibly similar as humans, but
Yeah.
the facade is that we're so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, well, thank you for the incredible work that you do and for sharing your story with us. It's my intention with this podcast that people feel like they're not alone, even if it's through listening to a conversation and resonating with one piece of your journey. And it's like, oh, I felt that call to go to India, or whatever it is. It's like we don't know how our sharing our story helps and impacts other people. So I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much, Bree. Such an honor to get to chat with you. Thank you for
Mm.
everyone listening.
Remember that the holiday promo is good through all of December for $200 off my Awakening private coaching program. All of the information is in the show notes.